My name is Bernice Holloway, and I'm 81 years old. I raised my daughter with nothing but love and worn-out hands. I buried a husband, held down 3 jobs, and gave up retirement to babysit grandchildren I adored like sunlight. I was the glue. The rock. The background no one thanked. Until the day they threw me away like trash. It was raining. Not the kind of rain that heals the earth, but the kind that humbles you. Soaks you through. Makes you remember you're alone. My suitcase hit the porch step with a hollow thud. Delilah, my only child, stood in the doorway with her husband, Kurt. His arms were crossed. Her face was cold. Unreadable. "You're making things hard, Mom," she said. "It's time." Time for what? Time to disappear? Kurt handed me an umbrella. I didn't take it. My hands were shaking too hard. "Where am I supposed to go?" I whispered. Delilah didn't answer. The door shut behind me with a soft finality. I stood there, soaked to the bone, my soft burgundy suitcase resting in a puddle, my whole life packed in one bag. Not even a jacket. The street was quiet. I didn't know which way to walk. No car. No home. No plan. A neighbor peeked through their curtain, but no one came out. I started walking toward the bus stop, rain dripping from my hair, shoes squishing in the gutter. Each step felt like betrayal cutting deeper into my bones. How did I get here? How did the girl I once sang lullabies to grow into the woman who tossed me out like old furniture? I sat on a cold metal bench, under a flickering bus sign, trying to remember the last time she hugged me. It had been years. Everything was about Kurt now. His business. His pride. His perfect image. I was just the shadow in their hallway. I opened my purse. $3 bills. 1 bus pass. A church bulletin I'd tucked away months ago, thinking I might visit. Suddenly, I was no longer a mother, a grandmother, or even a woman with a name. I was a burden. A ghost. And yet, something inside me whispered. Not yet. This isn't how my story ends. I ended up at St. Agnes Community Church, a mile from the bus stop. The janitor, Mr. Palmer, remembered me from years ago when I used to volunteer at Sunday breakfast. He opened the side door, looked me up and down, soaked, shivering, clutching my suitcase, and didn't ask a single question. "Come on in, Miss Bernice," he said softly. "You can sleep in the basement tonight. We got cots and coffee." I nodded once. That was the first human kindness I'd received in days. The basement smelled like old hymnals and dust, but the cot was dry. There were a few other women there, quiet ones, each carrying their own invisible weight. One woman, Edna, must have been close to my age. She handed me a blanket. "Thrown out?" she asked gently. I blinked back tears. "By my daughter." She nodded slowly. "Happens more than folks like to admit." That night, lying under a thin blanket, I stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to piece together where things had gone wrong. Flashback to 1979. Delilah was 4. I remember sewing her Halloween costume by hand, a little bumblebee suit. She laughed so hard when I painted her cheeks. "I want to be just like you, Mama," she said. I thought that meant love would last forever. I was wrong. Present, morning. I woke up to coffee and stale muffins. Mr. Palmer had set aside a fresh coat someone donated. A little big, but it kept me warm. I pulled out a notepad I'd found in the church office. And for the first time in years, I started writing, not prayers, not lists, but my story. Everything. The signs I ignored. The money they borrowed but never returned. How Kurt slowly took over the house, the bills, even my doctor appointments. How Delilah started siding with him, gaslighting me, calling me confused when I remembered things too clearly. By noon, I had 10 pages. By sunset, I had 20. Each word gave me back a sliver of power they thought I'd lost. That evening, Edna sat beside me and read a few lines over my shoulder. "You ever thought about taking this public?" she asked. I frowned. "Why would anyone care?" She smiled knowingly. "Because when one woman tells the truth, 10 others wake up." She handed me a flyer. Free legal aid and community stories, Thursdays, 5 p.m., Grace Center Hall. "You come with me," she said. "You're not alone anymore." The next Thursday, Edna and I took the bus to Grace Center Hall, a brick building with chipped steps and a banner that read, "Your story matters." Inside, folding chairs lined the walls, and a coffee pot hissed in the corner. That's where I met Elliot Breen. He was in his 70s, thin as a reed, with a camera hanging around his neck and a voice like gravel soaked in honey. "Name's Elliot," he said, shaking my hand. "Retired photojournalist. Now I document truth where nobody's looking." He motioned to my notebook. "May I?" I handed it to him. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second, then didn't look up for a long time. "You were silenced for 40 years, he said softly. "What if we helped you speak now, loud?" He showed me a modest blog he ran for the center. A place where women like me told the stories no one wanted to hear. Abandoned mothers. Manipulated elders. Stolen homes. Broken promises. Elliot clicked on a video titled, "I Raised 5 Kids, and Ended Up Homeless." My throat tightened. This wasn't just my story. This was everywhere. Flashback to 2004. I remember signing over my car title so Delilah could get to her nursing job. I walked to the store for 2 years after that. She sold the car within months. Said the transmission was bad. It wasn't. Back to present. Elliot looked me in the eye. "If we publish this, Kurt will see it. Delilah too. It might stir the pot." I didn't hesitate. "Let them boil." He smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. Over the next week, Elliot helped me shape my journal into a story. Each night after dinner, I sat at the church basement desk, typing on an old laptop, recalling moments I'd buried deep. The day they changed the locks. The fake apology note Kurt wrote on Delilah's behalf. The pension money that vanished. By Sunday, we had a title. Newspaper, thrown away at 81, How My Daughter and Her Husband Erased Me. It was bold. Unforgiving. True. On Monday morning, Elliot hit publish. And we waited. By noon, the story had over 3,000 shares. By dinner, it had been picked up by a women's advocacy page. By nightfall, I got a message through the church phone. A woman from Oregon said, "Your story is mine too." I thought I was alone. I cried. Not because I was sad. But because I had finally been heard. By Tuesday morning, the story had gone viral. Over 80,000 views, hundreds of comments, and emails pouring in from women, pastors, nurses, even a retired judge who said, "Ms. Holloway, your courage lit a fire we desperately needed." But the praise didn't come alone. By noon, Kurt struck back. It started with a letter slipped under the church basement door. No envelope. No name. Just a single line, scrawled in red marker. "Keep your mouth shut, or next time we throw you out, you won't get back up." Mr. Palmer found it. He looked at me with quiet fear. "Want me to call the police?" I shook my head. No. Let him watch me stand taller. Flashback to 2011. I remembered the night Kurt first raised his voice at me. He'd slammed a cabinet door because I'd rearranged the pantry. Delilah told me I was being too sensitive. "He's under pressure, Mom. Just stay out of the way." That's when I started making myself small. Quiet. Easy to forget. Back to present. Elliot wasn't surprised. "They always retaliate," he said. "Truth threatens the illusion." He helped me file a report with a local elder protection agency. Then he gave me something better. A microphone. We're going to record your story, video this time. No hiding. We set up in the church garden. One take. No script. Just me, looking into the lens and saying. They threw me out like trash. But I am not trash. I am treasure that endured the fire. And now I burn brighter than they ever imagined. By Friday, the video had 500,000 views. People were angry, and not at me. A journalist from a regional news station emailed. They wanted an interview. Then came the knock. Mr. Palmer answered the door. It was Delilah. No makeup. No smugness. Just tired eyes and a forced smile. Can I talk to my mother? She asked. I stepped forward. Her voice trembled. You didn't have to do this, Mom. I stared at her. You mean tell the truth? Her voice sharpened. Kurt's furious. His business is being flooded with hate mail. You've ruined our lives. No, Delilah. You ruined mine first. I just finally stopped pretending. She stood in stunned silence. I looked her in the eyes and said. I gave you everything. And you gave me the curb. Now I'm giving you something back, accountability. And then I shut the door. The morning after Delilah showed up, I found a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. I hit play. This is Eliza Monroe, from Silver Light Legal Aid. Ms. Holloway, I read your story. We'd like to offer you pro bono representation, especially if there's been financial exploitation. My hands trembled. Legal help? Real lawyers? For the first time in a long time, I felt like the ground beneath me wasn't just falling apart, it was shifting in my favor. Flashback to 1992. Delilah had just graduated high school. I'd saved up for a used car as a surprise gift. She burst into tears when I handed her the keys. She hugged me so tight. I'll never forget this, Mama, she said. But she did. The car was traded within the year for something Kurt liked better. Present, Grace Center. Eliza Monroe met me in person that Friday. Sharp suit. Braided hair. Firm handshake. She sat beside me, not across from me. That mattered. I went through your documents, she said. Your pension, property title, and power of attorney, all of it shows red flags. Kurt pressured me to sign things I didn't understand, I admitted. Eliza smiled gently. That's what they count on. But we're going to hit back, with facts, filings, and truth. By Monday, we had filed the first motion. A formal complaint of elder financial abuse. And then another. A request to freeze assets Delilah and Kurt had moved without consent. The news picked it up again. The headline was bold. 81-year-old woman takes legal action after family abandons her. That same day, someone left flowers outside the church basement with a note. For the warrior you've always been. A daughter who regrets. I cried for a long time. Not because of pain. But because I finally felt seen. Later that week, confrontation. Kurt finally showed up. He didn't knock. He stormed into the church kitchen like he still owned the world. You think this little pity parade's gonna last? He spat. You're nothing without us. I stood tall. You're wrong. I'm everything you hoped I'd forget I was. He tried to laugh it off. But I didn't flinch. I pointed to the exit. Get out before I call the police, and the reporters who are dying to meet you. He left. Fast. And for the first time, I felt powerful. That night, Elliot, Edna, and Eliza joined me for dinner in the basement. We ate chili off paper plates and toasted with plastic cups of ginger ale. To truth, Elliot said. To fire, Eliza added. To not going quietly, I said. We clinked cups. And laughed. I met Marlene Tyson the next morning at a small law office tucked behind the bakery on Main Street. No marble floors or leather chairs, Just a tiny desk, a blinking printer, and a woman in a red pantsuit with sharp eyes and zero patience for bullies. She stood up, shook my hand firmly. "You're Ruth Alcott. I read your article 3 times. I didn't sleep. I was furious." I smiled. "Welcome to the club." Marlene got right to work. She asked for everything, the forged documents, the bank records, the power of attorney Dean tricked me into signing after my surgery. "You didn't have full capacity when you signed this," she said. "I can get a medical expert to testify. That alone could tear this apart." I pulled a crumpled receipt from my coat pocket and handed it to her. "And this?" she asked. "It's from the day Dean transferred money from my husband's account, one day after the signature date. I found it buried in an old file folder." Marlene's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "You've got receipts, literally. Ruth, you're going to bury them in court." Flashback to 2001. Walter had only been gone a few months. Delilah came by, not with flowers, but with financial questions. "Do you really need that insurance check, Mom? You're not exactly working anymore." I laughed at the time. Thought she was joking. She wasn't. Back to present. That night, I walked home with a folder full of paperwork, a business card that said Tyson Legal Solutions, and something I hadn't felt in years, control. When I reached my trailer, there was a note taped to the door. "We know what you're doing. Stop or else." It was scrawled in marker. No name. Just threat. I stared at the note, then folded it neatly and slid it into a folder labeled "Fear doesn't work here anymore." I made tea. Sat down at the kitchen table. Looked through my files. And I smiled. Jules came by around 9 p.m. with blueberry pie and something better, a flash drive. I printed screenshots from a Facebook group Delilah's in. She's posting about an old woman going crazy, and calling it fake news. I figured it might help your lawyer. I took it gently. "Jules, why are you helping me?" She hesitated. "Because my grandmother raised me too. And when she got sick, my mom dumped her in a nursing home and never looked back. I was 14. Her voice cracked. I still hear her crying some nights. We sat together in silence. And I realized I wasn't just fighting for me. I was fighting for every woman who'd been silenced, erased, or abandoned. Final flashback to 1985. Walter once said, "If they ever turn on you, Ruth, promise me you won't just survive. Promise me you'll stand." That night, I whispered to his photo. "I'm standing now, Walter. And I'm not alone." 3 days after filing the lawsuit, Marlene called me urgently. "Brace yourself," she said. "Dean just filed a counterclaim. He's accusing you of mental instability and financial misconduct." I almost laughed. The man who drained my savings and dumped me in the rain now wanted to flip the story? "How creative," I said. "Is he desperate already?" Marlene wasn't amused. "He submitted a false affidavit claiming you've shown signs of dementia and can't manage your affairs. He's trying to discredit you before the real case even begins." Flashback to 2015. Dean once sat beside me at dinner, offered to simplify my banking by linking my accounts to his. "You shouldn't have to worry about money at your age, Ruth." I was tired that night. Lonely. I said yes. That was the beginning of the end. Back to present, small town tension. News of the court case had spread like wildfire. Grady's diner was packed with whispers. Some people were on my side. Others? Not so much. I overheard one old man say, "She probably forgot what she signed." Old folks mix things up. I stood up and walked straight over to his table. "My mind is sharp. My memory's better than yours. I remember raising 2 kids without help. I remember taking double shifts while they slept. I remember being used. What I don't remember is asking for pity." He blinked. Then nodded. Apologies, ma'am. That's the thing about surviving for 83 years, you stop apologizing. Marlene's strategy. We needed evidence. More than bank records. More than stories. Ezra was digging into Dean's business past. Jules helped me scan old mail and documents, and we found something we never expected. A second life insurance policy Walter had taken out, one that was quietly cashed years after his death. By Delilah. I stared at the paper for 10 full minutes, the number swimming. They hadn't just taken my money. They took his memory, too. Phone call from Delilah. She sounded colder this time. You're going to destroy us, Mom. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. You think people actually care about your story? They care about justice. And they care about women who've been used and discarded. You just forgot I was one of them. There was silence on her end. Then she said, You've changed. I replied, No. I just stopped playing dead. Click. The power of community. That night, Jules organized something at the community center. Story night, she called it. One by one, women stood and shared their truths, of betrayal, of abandonment, of being called crazy or too emotional. Then it was my turn. I stood before them with nothing but my voice. They didn't expect me to rise. They counted on me disappearing. But they forgot that I'm not just old, I'm eternal. Like fire, I don't fade. I burn. The crowd stood. Cheered. And I felt something I hadn't in decades seen. The courthouse in Millfield County was cold, with hard wooden benches and the smell of lemon floor polish and nerves. Marlene handed me a small notepad before we entered the courtroom. On the cover, in her neat handwriting, it said, You are not what they did to you. I clutched it like armor. Dean sat across the aisle, flanked by 2 expensive lawyers. Delilah was beside him, dressed in soft beige like she wanted to disappear. But I saw the twitch in her jaw, the way her fingers kept picking at her sleeve. They weren't calm. They were cornered. Marlene began with a storm. Exhibits. Documents. Testimonies. Ezra had dug up proof of Dean's past schemes. Jules had provided screenshots from Facebook and emails with time-stamped lies. And then came the insurance policy. The judge's eyebrows raised at the evidence, a $100,000 policy Walter had set aside for me, cashed in without my knowledge, years later. Delilah stared at the floor. Dean clenched his jaw. There was no permission. No consent. No conversation, Marlene said. This wasn't a family. This was a coordinated theft. Then it was my turn to speak. The courtroom blurred until all I could hear was my own heartbeat. I rose slowly. Walked to the stand. Took the oath. And then I spoke, not as a victim, but as a survivor. My name is Ruth Alcott. I am 83 years old. And for 4 decades, I gave everything to my children. I gave them my youth. My money. My love. My silence. And when I had nothing left, they threw me away. They told me I was crazy. A burden. Too old to matter. But I'm not here today for pity. I'm here because I remembered who I was before they erased me. I was strong. I was sharp. I was a mother. And now? I am no one's victim. You could hear a pin drop. Even the judge leaned in. Marlene gave me a slow, proud nod. And that's when I knew. I had taken the power back. Flashback to the night Walter proposed, 1957. We sat on the tailgate of his truck, eating peach pie out of a tin. He looked at me and said, You don't need a man to be strong. But if you let me love you right, I'll remind you of it every day. That love stayed, even when the people we raised forgot it ever existed. Later that night, at the trailer. I sat alone, sipping chamomile tea, heart calm. Then there was a knock on the door. It was Delilah. No makeup. No defense. Just tears. I didn't know about the policy, she whispered. You didn't want to know, I replied. Can we fix this? I shook my head gently. No. But we can face it. That's the first thing you've done right in years. She stood in silence. Then nodded. And left. 2 weeks later, I sat in the same courtroom, same worn benches, same stale air, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't trembling anymore. I wasn't waiting to be heard. Now, I was waiting to be recognized. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then silence. He read from his notes slowly, voice steady as stone. Based on the evidence submitted, including forged documents, misused financial power of attorney, and credible witness testimony, the court finds that Ruth Alcott's legal and financial rights were willfully violated. Dean's mouth twitched. Delilah sat stone still. The judge continued. All assets seized under the power of attorney are to be returned in full. A formal fraud investigation will be opened into Dean Templeton. Ruth Alcott's legal power over her estate is fully reinstated. Furthermore, this court recognizes Ms. Alcott as the sole rightful beneficiary of the life insurance policy in question. He paused. Then looked directly at me. Ms. Alcott, this court acknowledges your resilience, and deeply regrets what you endured. May this be a step toward peace. I didn't cry. Not yet. But I felt the dam inside me begin to crack. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered. I waved them off. This wasn't about fame. It was about freedom. Ezra stood nearby, tears in his eyes. You just made history, he said. No, I smiled, I just told the truth. That evening, Marlene came by the trailer with a bottle of sparkling cider. We toasted quietly, like veterans after battle. I've seen a lot of cases, Ruth, she said. But yours? Yours reminded me why I got into this in the first place. I nodded. I didn't just want to win. I wanted them to know. To feel it. They will, she said. For the rest of their lives. Flashback to 2010. I had once begged Delilah to go to therapy with me. I don't need fixing, she snapped. You're the one who's always crying. That was the last time I asked. Sometimes daughters grow up and lose their mothers on purpose. Back to present, a letter on the table. A few days later, I received a handwritten letter in a cream envelope. It wasn't from Delilah. It was from Dean's mother. Ruth. I had no idea what he did to you. I raised him better. Or I thought I did. I am ashamed, and I hope you find peace. I pray one day you'll teach your grandchildren what he never learned, kindness and consequence. Margaret Templeton. I folded the letter and slid it into my journal. Maybe some curses don't skip generations. But maybe some women, like me, can end them. 6 months had passed. The leaves outside my trailer had turned golden. The air smelled like cinnamon and second chances. My name was no longer whispered in pity. It was spoken with respect. I now volunteered twice a week at the community center, helping older women navigate online banking, power of attorney forms, and their own voices. I sat beside women with weathered faces and calloused hearts, and I reminded them. You are not invisible. You are not disposable. You are not too late. Every time I said it, I believed it a little more myself. Delilah hadn't called since the verdict. Not once. Until today. I heard the knock while watering the small potted plant Jules gave me. A soft knock, uncertain. I opened the door. And there she was. Her makeup gone. Her confidence cracked. But not broken. Hi, she said. Can I come in? I stepped aside. We sat at my table, the same one where I had once planned my revenge. She didn't apologize. Not yet. She just said. I read the article again. All of it. I didn't see it before. I think. I didn't want to. Silence. Then I replied. You didn't just miss the signs. You helped create them. Her eyes welled. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't, I said honestly. But I'm learning not to hate you either. She reached into her bag. A photo. Me and her, when she was 5. We were laughing. Covered in cake. She slid it across the table. I want to remember that version of us, she said. So do I whispered. Flashback, 1980. Walter once told me, revenge doesn't mean becoming like them. It means making sure they can't hurt you again, and knowing you're still you. Back to present. Delilah stood up. I'm moving out of Dean's house. I filed for divorce. I've got a lot to figure out. But if there's ever a space for me to earn back your trust, I'll show up. I nodded. Don't come back to be my daughter, I said. Come back to be a better woman. She nodded. And left. No promises. Just the truth. 1 year later. My story was now part of a national elder justice campaign. Lawmakers had referenced it in new elder abuse legislation. Marlene asked me to speak at a state panel. I walked on stage slowly, but I stood tall. My name is Ruth Alcott, I said into the mic, and for 40 years, I was silent. But silence is how they win. And I am done losing. At the trailer garden. I sit on a bench, the sunset stretching across the sky like a soft goodbye. Jules brings tea. Ezra reads the latest letter from a woman across the country who said, "You gave me the courage to leave my son's house." Thank you. I smile. I'm not angry anymore. Not empty either. Just whole. They tried to bury me in silence. But I grew in the dark. And when I rose, I didn't rise to destroy them. I rose to find myself again. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.